What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of the Oscars, the podcast that takes a look at the 2023 Oscars 24 minutes at a time. I am Ethan Simmey.
And I am Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are finally heading on our 12-year journey back to Pandora to spend some time with the Na'vi and protect the planet from the sky people in Big Jim Cameron's Avatar, The Way of Water.
Yes, Big Jim is back. Let's
Big
do
Jim.
it. Jake Sully lives with his newfound family formed on the extrasolar moon Pandora. Once a familiar threat returns to finish what was previously started, Jake must work with Neytiri and the army of the Na'vi race to protect their home. Now, before we head into just a delightful conversation with Preston Moore talking all about Avatar: The Way of Water and you just losing your mind about the most minuscule things in Avatar: The Way of Water,
It's super valid.
we have some Oscars power rankings to do. We're going to keep this short and sweet, but this is our first power rankings that we have done since the Oscar nominations list officially came out. We recorded this last week.
This is the first one that people have heard us do.
Exactly.
You and I did this last week.
We recorded this last week. We had a delightful conversation that was very private between the both of us for like 35 minutes about the Best Picture race and the nominees and the list and all of the very important things. And we were like, all right, cool, on to the conversation with Jamie Jirak. And we looked at our recording, and I was like, Ben, guess what? We didn't hit record. It was sick. So
exciting.
We're going to run it back. So this is our first time doing it since we have the nomination list. That means no Aftersun and no Babylon. Babylon was the more realistic one, or Aftersun, excuse me. Little sad, little unfortunate. It was a stretch, but so I want to know any additional thoughts about the Oscars since the list came out about a week and a half ago. And then I want you to start with your power ranking because I'm still mulling some things over as we go.
Yeah. Brief thoughts about the Oscars. Like, I'm excited about some of the nominations. Obviously, people can go back and listen to our Oscar reaction to kind of see the nomination reaction. Still kind of bugged that Top Gun didn't get a cinematography because that's just like, if it should have gotten anything, it should have gotten that one thing. Like it's so good. Like we talk about Top Gun a lot in this episode because it's also in the VFX with Avatar. It's like that probably is right, but it should have been in cinematography. So overall though, I think they're okay. I'm curious to see how this whole Andrea Riseborough thing plays out, but as of today, we still don't know. So we'll see. But for my rankings, now that we have all 10 of the movies, basically, like I've ranked all 10 of them, but I have only seen at this point 7 of them. So my bottom 3 are going to be the 3 that I haven't seen just because I don't feel right like throwing them anywhere else. And also I don't really foresee a couple of them even moving out of the bottom spots. But so I have not seen Triangle of Sadness, which I think could move up a little bit.
I can't believe you haven't seen that, by the way. That's just unreal. It's Criterion Collection certified, Ben. Come on.
You made me go see Avatar. You can only ask so much of me.
That's true.
And I haven't seen All Quiet on the Western Front yet, as well as Women Talking. So those are the 3 that I won't be ranking. But as of right now, as it's always going to be, Everything Everywhere All at Once is my number 1. It's my hope and my dream that it wins. Number 2 is going to be The Banshees of Inisherin. Number 3, I still just can't hide like the love that these people have for Spielberg. I think I don't know that he's going to get Best Picture, but I do think maybe he'll get the Best Director, possibly Screenplay. I don't know, but I have that at number 3. I had to come to terms with myself and bump Elvis down to 4 because as much as I want like Austin Butler to win and I love this movie, like I know it's not for everybody. So Elvis at 4, Tar at 5, Top Gun Maverick at 6, and Avatar: Way of Water is bringing up the rear here at number 7.
Wow.
Listen, I have enjoyed these movies. I get my ranking in the episode here so people can find out exactly what I think about Avatar. But I like it better than the first one. And I don't have an overall negative review of it. So even though the last slot isn't like this movie sucks, why is it here? Yeah. But it's just kind of like something's got to be at the end, and that's what it is. So still pulling for Everything Everywhere though.
Yeah, no, I can respect that. I'm sorry that Elvis is in your 4th spot. I feel bad about that because I know how much fun you had with Elvis, and that's tough to hear. Okay, so here are my power rankings. I guess any lingering thoughts on the Oscars? I think a couple surprises, obviously, Paul Mescal being like the big one that we really celebrated. We're very, very excited about. And Triangle of Sadness, I think Ruben Östlund getting in for Best Director, I think is kind of the other big, interesting, intriguing thing, because now that means that both him as the director and Triangle of Sadness as the movie are in the Best Director, Best Picture race, which always is a very fascinating thing, a la Bong Joon-ho, Parasite 2019. See if they can take the double. And then, a couple snubs, but we do cover that in our Oscars reaction pod just a couple of weeks ago. I've still got Everything Everywhere All at Once as my number one slot. I have my reservations. I'm a little worried that it won't pull through, but I feel like it's always been. I feel like, it's literally the living meme of like, it's always been that way. Like, this is how the world was designed. Banshees at number 2, Tar at number 3. And, I subscribe to the Amanda Dobbins school of consciousness on this one. And I hope she doesn't back down from this school of thought on the big picture, because then I'll just look like a bozo. But she persuaded me. She really did. Everything Everywhere and Banshees are really in that number 1 spot for a lot of people. If they split that number 1 spot, Tar is going to be sitting at that 2 or 3 for pretty much everybody? Question mark? I would assume so. I would think so. It's really got that vibe to it. So preferential balloting could see Tar jump in the race there. The Fabelmans is number 4. You're right. The Academy loves little Stevie. Triangle of Sadness at 5. Elvis at number 6. Top Gun Maverick at number 7, which is just a bummer. Like, it's a bummer because like two months ago we were like, could Top Gun Maverick could do it? Like, could this be the best picture? Like, could Tom Cruise be nominated for Best Actor? And that, I guess, was just a big dream. I don't know. We're just like not living in that reality anymore. Avatar: The Way of Water at number 8. And now I have not seen All Quiet on the Western Front at 9 or Women Talking at 10. We will be covering Women Talking next week here on the pod with guest Rachel Leishman from Twitter. She is just fantastic. So we're really excited to talk about that. It's going to be a first-time watch for both of us, so I'm really interested to see kind of what we think about that. But, I just think going into the Oscars, at least right now, January 31st, when we are recording, this seems like the lineup that we are going to get. I do have one question for you before we jump into our conversation about Avatar. Could we see anything, Triangle of Sadness, Elvis, maybe, Top Gun Maverick? Could we see any of these titles take a big kind of late season swing, kind of like Coda did, right? Coda was kind of a no-name, and then 4 weeks before the Oscars, it was all about Coda. It did really well at SAG, and then just picked up steam from then on. Is there a movie that you could see doing that, or do you feel like we're pretty much locked right now?
I mean, the voting all happens, for the next, in the next month or so. So I'm curious to see what the press junket is like for all of these people. I think that's really going to be a make or break. Like, Colin Farrell's just charming all the time. So that's why I could see Banshees like picking up some votes. That's why, Guillermo del Toro's won so much. I mean, he makes great movies, but people also just like hanging out with him. I want to hear him talk. So I don't know if I see anything making that jump, that big of a leap, but I'll be curious to see obviously how it all shakes out here. And I'm excited to watch Triangle of Sadness, because that's the one thing I think could work its way up in my draft, in my rankings anyway. So I don't know if it's enough to take over Best Picture, but I think it's noteworthy that it got the nominations that it did.
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely will be some movements here in the next few weeks as we go into the back half, like the last 5 weeks that we have of this kind of season. If Austin Butler campaigns in his Elvis voice, I think it's a lock, and I think it's a big bump for Elvis. I'm not even kidding. I'm being totally real.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. So
I can't wait.
I'm pulling for him. I love Brendan Fraser's performance. I love Colin Farrell's, but I would just love if Austin Butler won this. I would be so stoked.
Yeah,
I just want to hear his acceptance speech in his Elvis voice. I think it'd be great, though.
I know. I think that'd be great. You get up there, thank you, Mama. Thank you so much for this award. I want to thank the Academy. That would be awesome. Like, I would fucking love that. Okay, we've got 40 days until the biggest night in Hollywood, at least at time of recording right now on January 31st. I'm curious to see if our power rankings hold up. I'm really curious to see how much they shift over the next 5 weeks. That's a long, long time in terms of Everything Everywhere All at Once that has held on for months and months and months and months. And it seems like it can make the final stretch of the marathon, but that could be where it falters and where people start to get a little tired of the discourse. I really don't know. So I'm really intrigued to see how our power rankings will change, how a lot of people kind of will view this. Now onto our conversation with Preston Moore, all about Avatar: The Way of Water, and Ben finally comes to light about how he feels about the Avatar franchise. Enjoy our conversation. We are officially halfway through our Oscar season here, with this being week number 5 of Oscars Talk. And we have quite the movie to talk about, quite the movie that we are covering tonight for a multitude of reasons. But what fun would it be if it were just Ben and I? I feel like that would not be very fun. When you travel to Pandora, you want to bring as many people with you as possible. So we've got a wonderful guest. We have journalist Preston Moore on the show today. Preston, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be, on the show with you guys. I know that we kind of just met recently, but I'm excited about this. I just saw Avatar for I think the 4th time yesterday.
Oh wow, props! Very impressive.
I know I have a friend who saw it like 8 times, but I'm jealous of him. But I only got to see it 4, but I made sure to go back, so I'm excited to talk about it. One of my favorites.
You could not have had a better intro, Preston. Honestly, you're setting the tone for Ben to lose his fucking mind, and I am so excited. This is gonna be wonderful. I can't wait.
I love it, man. 4 times. That's impressive. I like that. I'm trying to think, what's the last thing I saw like multiple times in the theater? I'm sure. I mean, No Way Home, Endgame, but like what non-Marvel thing have I seen multiple times in the theater? I don't know.
You're not really a multiple guy, Ben. You're like a one and done in the theater usually.
Oh, at my age, yeah, I just once and then like, yeah, maybe later, but yeah, not the same day.
That's fair.
Yeah, for sure. The weirdest thing, this is a tangent, I apologize, but I used to work at the movie theater, and the weirdest thing that I saw multiple times while I worked there was the fucking Green Mile. I don't know if either of you have seen that, but I saw that like for some reason I was just blown away by it. I saw like 8 times in theaters, and I was just like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I loved it, and it's like it's free. I got to see it, so why not?
Ruined you.
Those are some weird times, without a doubt. Anyways, tangent done there. Preston, I'm stoked to have you here. I'm jealous of your entire outfit, as we talked about before we started recording. I need one of those hats for sure. But you came to us through our friend of the pod, Alden. We realized that we had filled all of our guest spots, but we had one glaring hole, and it was for Avatar: The Way of Water. So we reached out to our friends, including Alden, and like within 10 minutes, you were booked. You were here, ready to go. I mean, this feels like a silly question given what you just said, but like, I take it you're an Avatar dude? Like, this is your 4th time seeing this one in theaters. Like, were you a fan of the first one? Like, were you waiting for this one?
Yeah, I was. So it's interesting, the kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say like journey that I had with Avatar, but it is kind of, it's gone through a few different like iterations in my head when it comes to the first one, because back then it was one of the first PG-13 movies that my parents allowed me to see. When I was a kid. Cool. Before I was 13, it was like a big deal for me. I remember one of the characters said a bad word, and I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, I thought it was the coolest thing.
That's awesome.
So I kind of fell in love with it by default then as a kid. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And obviously I hadn't seen it actually visually looked like that.
Right.
So I really loved it then. And then over the course of the years, I still liked it, but I didn't love it as much. And then I got back into it. I watched it again like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, hang on, this is still one of the best movies I've ever seen. Like, I still loved it just as much, which only, increased the hype that I had for Way of Water. To the point where when it released, I was like, there's no way that this movie is actually real. Like, I can't believe I'm after 13 years and how many delays. Like, it's insane that it actually came out. So yeah, I'm a pretty big fan.
That's awesome.
Can I ask you, so since you are such a big fan, I'm really curious, because obviously with Avatar, part of the experience, part of the sell is the experience itself, is the kind of communal going to the cinema and enjoying this in the 3D format that Avatar kind of pioneered and is really sticking to. James Cameron out here just doing the most and re-releasing Titanic in 3D in like a couple weeks, which is unreal. Good for him. Big Jim doing what he does best. But when tickets went on sale for Avatar, I want to know your journey. I want to know, did you buy tickets right away? Did you go for like, IMAX 3D? Did you go for a specific format? Like, what was your game plan going into The Way of Water? I'm just fascinated.
Oh man, I bought tickets immediately. Like it was
Yeah,
one of
you
those
did.
things where even whenever the main teaser came out, I remember it premiered before, I want to say Multiverse of Madness or something like that. A big
Yeah.
movie
Yeah.
earlier in the year.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was playing because they released it in theaters
Yep.
before they released it online, like a night before.
Mm.
So I remember just like kind of hearing a couple things. I normally try not to watch the trailers when I'm in the theater. I'll just scroll on my phone and not pay attention to them
Interesting.
because I don't want to I just don't want to see trailers as much, especially in movies that I'm gonna see anyways.
Yeah.
Avatar being one of those. So I was like trying to not pay attention to trailers in general. And then I just glance up and I see like a Navi in a shot that I've never seen before, having just recently rewatched Avatar and fallen back in love with it. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, oh my God. I was like, that's Avatar. It's real. This sequel actually exists. It's the first time we'd seen any footage or anything like that. And it was in the theater instead of online. And so, yeah, I was super excited. By the time the main trailer rolled around, I like didn't even watch it. Again, it came on when I was at the movies a couple times and I would just like down and not pay attention. I didn't want to see it at all. So I tried to avoid as much as I could going into it. So that I could have that experience that very first time of just like, this is crazy after 13 years, like almost in some of those years having to defend the movie against some people who came out like, I don't want to say came out against it, but people who didn't like it as much or, claim that it wasn't, there's the whole no cultural footprint and all that stuff or whatever that people want to say about it. And you can believe whatever you want, but people who didn't think that Way of Water was going to succeed or be good or do well in the box office. So like to have that experience that first night of just like, okay, it's here. And not only is it here, but it is amazing. Like that was huge for me. So I loved it. I think I went back twice that weekend.
Wow.
Then
Nice.
brought my dad later in the week and then took like a couple weeks off, I guess, before yesterday and seeing it again.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's amazing.
I like that, man.
I think it's interesting because, Ben, you saw this in a regular format. You just saw it as like a regular movie, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I saw it in IMAX 3D for the first time on opening night. Like I went far out to like the best IMAX screen close to my city that was like the biggest and the nicest. And I had never been there before, and it was really quite an incredible experience. And then this past weekend, I saw it again in RPX Real D 3D. So I feel like we've all kind of seen it in different formats. Ben, I'm curious, with it not being in 3D, do you feel like that might have detracted from your experience? I know we're not quite like reviewing the movie yet, but I'm just so curious because I think the format of which we see this movie is so fascinating, and that's part of the larger conversation with like watching movies on your phone the way Martin Scorsese, says you're not supposed to, and all these types of things I think is fascinating.
I mean, obviously it must have had like a different kind of impact on me without a doubt. There's multiple reasons that I saw it in this format. But as you know, from, our personal text exchanges, like the last few times my partner and I have gone to the theater, we've sat next to like just the worst people. And so the regular screening of Avatar was the most open. And it's like, okay, cool. If we know that we can go and not be bothered by someone, like this is ideal. And we got lucky. Like we got our seats. There was one other person on our row. He was a few seats down. Like, so in that sense, it was great compared to some of the last movies I've seen where it's like, I wasn't bothered. I didn't see a phone screen. There was no one talking. Like it was ideal. It was great. But I also understand like it wasn't as immersive, obviously, as like an IMAX 3D would be. But I will say that I feel like the time this movie took and the significance that it's having on the box office and stuff, it should also work in a regular format,
right? And
not rely just on the 3D stuff. Cause then it's like a gimmicky, like you're going to the planetarium and doing like their light show 3D, whatever kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you're doing that. Like that's a whole different thing. Like if this is really going to be one of the highest grossing movies of all time, like it can't just be on the heels of it being in IMAX and 3D. Like it's got to work in every format. Like you said, I mean, so many people watch stuff on their phone and stuff now. I mean, that takes it to a different extreme. I think like there are tons of things that work great in the theater that don't work at home. But like if I'm still in a theater, I should still be able to like enjoy your movie. And I did, like we'll get into the whole review later, but I'm still curious. Maybe at some point I'll check it out in the 3D, but it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. Who would have thought that Avatar would bring back your theater experience, Ben? Who would have fucking thought?
Thanks, Jim. I guess that's what it was. 12 years in the making.
Jim's looking out for you, dude. I went and saw it. I went and saw it on RPX Real D 3D, which is like Regal's premiere experience. I saw Top Gun Maverick in that as well. That was like my third time seeing Maverick, and that shit slaps because the seats like start to like jostle, and you feel really immersed, which is really pretty cool.
Yeah.
I went Sunday at noon. There were 52 other people in my theater. I kid you not. I counted them. Wow. I went on the app and I was like, how many tickets did they sell? And they were families and small children and older people and couples, like every person you could imagine in its 7th weekend showing up for Avatar: The Way of Water, a 3+ hour movie that it's just so astounding. Avatar: The Way of Water is currently the 4th highest grossing movie of all time history, and it's been out for 7 weeks, which is something. That's something.
Crazy. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Number 3 is Titanic, and I mean, you're only talking about $80 million here. You're coming very close to Titanic. Again, another big Jim. You've got Avengers Endgame at $2.8 billion, so that's another $600 million. And then the first Avatar is the number 1 highest grossing movie of all time, $2.923 billion. So I don't think it'll catch that. Obviously, Avatar has had a lot of re-releases over the years. Same with Avengers Endgame, had a re-release there. So I think the theatrical experience is obviously a large part of this Avatar conversation, and it meaning so much to the culture of movie theaters and cinema and people in general about like the possibilities of literally transporting to another place, another planet. So I think this is a great segue to kind of talk about the Oscars for a second and then review Avatar as a whole, so we can start getting into our thoughts. Ben, I know you have thoughts, so I'm very excited to see. And Preston, I know you have thoughts as well, and I can't wait for you guys to talk about this. First, Preston, I want to ask you, we always ask every single guest that's on the pod, since we are covering the Oscars, what do the Oscars mean to you? Do you watch them every year? Do you try to watch all 10 Best Picture nominees, or do you not really care at all?
Yeah, so I didn't really get into film until 2019. This past year, 2022, was the first year, or I've watched more movies this last year than I ever have, which I'm pretty proud of.
Nice.
So this year I'm more into it than I ever have been. I've been into it these last 3 years, obviously, being that I got into just the art form and just everything about it pretty much on a much more deeper level than I was before. So I've been into it, but to me, I mean, it's definitely by far has always been my favorite awards show. Has always been, something that I really enjoy because I've always loved movies, but as I started to watch more movies than, the top 10 biggest blockbusters of the year, as I would watch like growing up, now that I'm watching a lot of the other movies that are nominated, I don't always get around to watching every single movie nominated, but I try to get around to at least most of them, what I mean? So it's become more interesting to me the more that I've seen these movies. I think back to maybe like 6 or 7 years ago before I was super into film, and I would see these like Best Actor and Best Actress nominees, and I would maybe know one of them. I would maybe have seen one of those movies, and I would be like, oh yeah, they should win. But I also can't speak to the other 4, so it doesn't matter. So it's been over the years, it's gotten a lot more interesting, and this year is probably the most excited that I've been for the Oscars, just because of how great of a year it was and how so many of the categories I feel like are still pretty wide open. I mean, there's some favorites, there's some, some seemingly locks. I would say like Avatar for VFX is probably, I would say maybe the most sure lock that there is. But outside of, a handful of them, there's still a lot of toss-ups. So I'm really excited for this year specifically, due to the fact that, everything seems so up in the air. There's been so many great movies this year, and because personally, I've seen more movies this year than I ever have. So it's a big, exciting event for me this year, more so than it's been in the past.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a great little like sound bit for people that are like, I don't really get the Oscars. Like, the Oscars give to you what you kind of put into it, right? If you show up having seen more of the movies or all 10 Best Picture nominees, or, the movies that all of the best supporting actors are in, you obviously have a much more invested stake kind of in the race, and you know what is possible, and you have a much more personal attachment to it, which I think, a lot of people kind of fail to see. They think they can just like follow the masses, which is true in some sense of it. But I think that's important to remember. I want to know from both of you. This is my core question of this podcast. This is why I wanted to, besides the fact that it's known for Best Picture, this is like the reason I wanted to talk about Avatar. Ben, I do want to start with you because you're not the biggest Avatar guy. You tweeted about it. You tweeted some very sad boy gifs, honestly, about you going to go see Avatar.
Yeah.
Here's my question for you. Is this a bit with the Academy, or is this real? 2009, Avatar was nominated for 9 Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Avatar: The Way of Water is nominated for 4 Oscars. Both of those times, you're looking at Best Picture nomination. Do you truthfully, this is safe space, Ben, do you think it's a Best Picture nominee and it's worthy to be among this list? Or do you think the Academy is just trying to say, hey, we see you as moviegoers, we know you like this movie, and we support that, and we'll give you one of our slots?
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit of me leans into that. I think I would qualify it in the sense that if this were, pre 2009 and only 5 nominees, I don't know that Avatar would fall into it. It definitely feels like it's falling in the 6 to 10 slot. And
right.
Like, my bias aside, I just think like, I don't know compared to some of these other movies that it would be up there. So in that sense, like but like any show, anything, like they want to draw in the viewers. So it also makes sense. Like if you have what is now the 4th, highest grossing movie of all time, there's a good chance people are going to watch it, and same, we got like Angela Bassett for Wakanda Forever. Like you get a lot of the Marvel people there as well. Like it's an intelligent move, like, so it makes sense. I don't know that it's like a bit in the sense of like, I don't know, let's just throw them something. Like I do think VFX is good. Like I was going to ask you somewhat jokingly, but it's like, this is up against the Batman and Top Gun for VFX. Like what do you think should win there? Cause all those are like, and Wakanda Forever's in there. Like the only other one is All Quiet on the Western Front. But those other 4 are very like populous films. Like those are high box office movies. And they all, have really great effects. Obviously this is probably the most like VFX movie out there. So I wouldn't be upset if it wins. But yeah, I think it's maybe less of a bit, but just more of a strategy for sure, where it's just like, let's cast this net around these $2 billion. You know what I mean? Let's see what we can pull from it. But again, like, I don't think it's actually like one of the 5 best movies nominated.
Yeah. I guess my viewpoint, kind of before we got our nomination, kind of 10 list, I thought Top Gun Maverick was going to be that movie. I was like, look, if the Academy sees Top Gun Maverick, it has been the talk of the town for 5 months, for 6 months. Like, it saved movie theaters. I know that sounds crass and oversaid and all of these things, but it's the truth. It saved movie theaters. Tom Cruise saved the cinema, and a lot of people were banking on the fact that the Academy would recognize Maverick, as it did. It did include it in the Best Picture nomination list, but would also include Tom Cruise as a Best Actor. It's kind of a nod to that kind of, culturally significant moment. And I feel like anytime that there's an Avatar release, you might just like lose out on that opportunity. Like no matter what movie you are, I think Avatar kind of fills that slot of like the Academy saying like, we see Avatar, we know people love Avatar, and we want people to watch our award show. So we're gonna do that. I was hoping it would have been Top Gun Maverick, kind of on a more impactful level. Preston, what do you think of this? What do you take away from this? I know obviously you're very pro Avatar, so I'm curious because it was nominated for Best Picture in 2009 as well. And we've got Avatar 3 coming out next year. We've got Avatar 4 coming out in 2026, I believe. And then we have Avatar 5 without a release date, I believe. But we have 3 more of these things. Are they going to keep getting nod for Best Picture?
I don't know. I think when it comes to that, I truly think in terms of the next couple, sequels, I think that more so depends on the actual quality of the movies. I mean, I think that actually more so depends on whether they're good or bad. I mean, obviously this one was reviewed extremely highly. I mean, personally, I love it. But when it comes to Way of Water getting nominated, I agree with you, Ben. I don't think that if there were, only 5 nominees, I don't think it's one. That being said, there's not. So do I think it's going to win? No.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised that it was one of the nominees, and I think it earned that, and I also think it may be in part Hollywood kind of acknowledging, like you mentioned, Ethan, with the Top Gun Maverick stuff. Top Gun kind of brought people back to the cinema and was also a phenomenal movie on its
Mhm.
own right, you
Yeah.
know? And that's why it brought people back to the cinemas because it was so good and it had that star power of Tom Cruise behind it. That being said, when it comes to Avatar, did it necessarily bring people back into the cinema? Not in the way Top Gun did, because it wasn't with when it in terms of Top Gun, that was a little more unprecedented.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, that was like, this is the first time that people are really coming back in full force in this way. So I don't think Avatar brought people back in that way, but at the same time, I do think Hollywood maybe kind of, giving a nod to everything that The Way of Water does in terms of mainly VFX, in
Yeah.
terms of how
Yeah.
it pushes the genre or the medium forward, in terms of how it really just really pushes the boundaries of what you can do. On top of that, they told a really great story, and they told a story that a lot of people have loved and resonated with, obviously. But I think that that was the same case in 2009. I think that Avatar pushed the boundaries so much that they're seeing this and they're saying, "Hey, this is insane what
Yeah,
you're
for
doing."
sure.
And the
Yeah.
fact that you did this and also made a pretty good movie
Yeah.
that people are liking and is reviewed well, and that Hollywood generally likes, yeah, we'll give it a Best Picture nomination for those merits in and of itself. Is it a Best Picture winner? I don't think so. I wouldn't give it the win, and I don't think it's going to get the win, but I'm not surprised at all that it got nominated. When it comes to those next ones, though, 3, 4, and 5, especially if we don't have 13-year
Yeah,
gaps in
yeah.
between them, it is going to be a little bit more like, okay, like, we've seen the amazing VFX,
Yeah. What else?
like,
Yeah.
unless you push the envelope a little bit more, which I don't even really know how much that can be done,
Yeah.
um,
I
you're
mean,
gonna have to make a really dang good movie.
Yeah.
yeah, without a doubt. And I think part of it too, just before we move on, is like, I think James Cameron, coming in with Titanic and just almost sweeping the entire thing.
Yep.
Like, to some extent, in my mind, it gets like the M. Night Shyamalan treatment, where it's like,
Mm,
you came in with Sixth Sense and fucking knocked us, knocked out of the park. Every
yeah.
time I'm going to be curious if you can repeat it, and I think
Yeah.
it's kind of the Jim Cameron thing where it's like, you did Titanic and you killed it. You did the first Avatar and like technically changed movies, you didn't necessarily win everything. So I feel like he's also just kind of earned that, like, I don't know if this is going to be as good as his other stuff, but like this one time he made a really amazing movie that the Academy awarded forever. So like they're going to have a spot for him at the table. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. I think he just kind of earned that honorary mention for sure.
Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting, and one more thing worth noting is, at least to me personally, it feels a little bit like the Academy is cheating when it comes to these movies, because they're nominating them and by them I mean Avatar and Top Gun Maverick. They're nominating them for a lot of below the line things, right? A lot of
Yeah.
things that the average moviegoer, if you went to go see Top Gun Maverick for the first time, it's your first time back in the cinema in a year and a half, and you're like, this movie fucking rips, like Top Gun is super cool, and then it gets nominated for like best sound. You're like, I don't know what that, I don't get that. I don't really know what that means. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not having, someone super duper famous present this award necessarily. So things like that, I just feel like the Academy is kind of like, look, we're gonna nominate it for a lot of below the line stuff, and people will feel good about that, and we'll give it a Best Picture slot. But again, if it's the 5, it's not going in, and in no way in hell is it going to come even close to winning, and it won't work. And all of these things, I just feel like that's their way of just kind of trying to appease for that market. And to me, I thought this was the year where it kind of, at least Top Gun Maverick and Avatar might pull something off here in the next 5 weeks. We don't know, yet to be seen. I just felt like it had that momentum behind it, where like the industry said like, this is the movie. And I think the one thing to kind of delineate these two movies, Maverick got 6 noms, Avatar: The Way of Water got 4, and in the 6 for Maverick is Best Adapted Screenplay. I think that's very critical and very crucial as we go into our reviews. I'm sure that we'll have some thoughts on the screenplay and a lot of the let's just say easy outs that James Cameron might take in terms of narrative and how to make things better work for what he wants to do. Preston, I'm gonna let you set the tone. I'm gonna let you be the first review for Avatar: The Way of Water. Tell us what you thought of the movie overall. You've kind of given us some insight. We're gonna do true cinema moments after this, so don't tell us your favorite part quite yet. But
right.
yeah, walk us through the movie just a little bit.
Oh man, it's such a broad thing, especially with a movie like this.
Yeah,
especially with something like this. Like this is 3 freaking hours of just like balls to the wall movie. It's so much movie in one movie. I feel the same way about like RRR this year, but like even more so with RRR. But anyways, with Avatar, it's like it's one of those things to where I really can only compare it to a few other movies that I've seen in the cinema, at least with my first experience of just like I have never like I can't believe this movie's real. I think of like No Way Home, The Force Awakens, like Avengers Endgame, those big moments of like I can't believe that this is actually happening. In like fandom movies, obviously. But as far as Way of Water goes, obviously like I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great. I gave it 5 stars, and I didn't know, one of my biggest fears actually leading up to the movie around like November, we're like a month out from release. I've been defending Avatar 1 for 12 years now. And now I'm just like in the back of my head, I'm like, oh God, what's bad? Exactly. It's not good. I spent so long like defending this movie online and in person and like telling people that I love it, and like still, even when it was not the cool thing to do, like I still loved it. And now the next one's coming out. Oh God, I hope I like it. Thank God I did.
Nice.
I mean, I think it's I don't know what I can say that hasn't been said. I think the VFX obviously are one of the standouts, obviously. That's why I think it's a shoe-in for the award. As far as everything else, though, I think it tells a really great story. I think it's, that third act is so incredible, and it's so impactful in the way that the tension rises throughout it, and you really feel, like anybody could go. You feel the stakes of this thing. You feel the stakes of these characters. And it's because I feel like Cameron's just been like cooking this meal for the last 3 hours, where the last like 45 minutes of that, you find out, oh, this is a feast. Like this is huge. This is so much more than I thought it was going to lead to, or than I could have expected, because we have these little moments along the way between certain characters that make the bigger moments in the end mean so much more. I mean, think about one thing that comes to mind after just seeing it recently was Neytiri and Quaritch. Quaritch has this like when he realizes that Neytiri's who killed him, and he sees the arrow as the calling card, like that little moment is repeated over and over again throughout the first and second act until the end. When he sees it, he's like, oh man, she's here. And it's a big deal, and you feel that a little bit more because we've dropped all these little breadcrumbs leading up to this. And I feel like that's the whole thing, really. It's the way the story moves. It's just dropping little hints. First 2 acts maybe a little bit slow, but not without purpose. They're building something. They're building the foundation to where when you reach that climax of the film, it's just like so it's so huge. It's different in a way that we haven't really seen in a lot of blockbusters recently. I think of popular Marvel or DC movies where I go to see No Way Home. I know Spider-Man's not going to die. Like I'm that's very, very, very unlikely. But I go see Avatar: Way of Water. Jake Sully might die. I don't know. Like I feel like it could happen, and things like that just make this movie so much more exciting to watch, so much better to watch for me than a lot of other blockbusters, because it still is. It's a different kind of experience than we're used to in this day and age, and I really appreciate that amongst a million other things. But
yeah. Part of the reason I wanted you to go first, Preston, because Ben, I wanted to give you time. I wanted Preston to see if he could change your mind, to see if he could sell you a little bit on the merits of Avatar. And I'm curious. We haven't spoke. You told me that you were gonna go see it, and then I texted you later in the day, and I was like, you gotta give me something. You gotta tell me, like, where did you land at least, so I can kind of like know going into this pod, and all you text back was like a gif of the genie sealing his mouth shut, and I was like, this sucks. Like, why you're gonna block me out, man? So now is your time. I've been waiting for this as much as you have. I want to know what you thought of Avatar: The Way of Water.
Okay. So leaving the theater, the thing I was most impressed with is I didn't leave to go pee.
Wow, nice.
I stayed and I watched it, and I was kind of impressed. I was like, I felt like at some point I'm gonna be like, I just need a break. I'm gonna go pee, whatever. And and I had to, and it probably happened about an hour and a half in. But Preston, like you said, like it kind of really builds up to this big third act, and I kind of felt like I knew where we were going here. Like nothing. I don't know that anything about this story is like super unique or we haven't seen or heard before, so it's like cool, I get where this is going. It's just done in a very technically amazing way. But I also just like, but I want to see what's going on here. Like I don't want to leave right now. And that's like as dumb as that may sound, that's like the highest praise I can get it. Where I was like, because I mean Ethan will attest to like he's like, when are you gonna go see Babylon Avatar? It's like when I can see it at home, man. Fucking 3 hours. Like I'm not going to the theater to see, that's insane, So yeah, it was like to preface it, the bar was really low, but I liked it better than the first movie for sure. Nice. I left the first movie essentially just like, I've seen Fern Gully and Dances with Wolves. Like, why did I spend time watching this? Like, it's technically, I get it, but it's just like, I have seen this story before. Like, I'm just so like not into this. And that's what I've been. I wouldn't have like fought with you on it, Preston, by any means, because like I like when people like stuff. Like I think that's great. I just like, for me, I was just like, it's not for me. Like, so I had zero expectations going into this one, other than like, if anyone spends 12 years on anything, like it better be pretty good, like that's a long time to work on a movie. And like he did it. It was good. Like it looked awesome. Again, like even in the regular format, 2D, like it looked really good. I can see, where some of that stuff would have like looked just super amazing in the 3D IMAX aspect. But yeah, I don't know. Like it was good. But just like, I was like, man, this was a $350 million, like C, you know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, okay. It's just like, cool. Cause like, honestly, like you were just like, and honestly, I'm saying all of this genuinely. Like, I'm not trying to like take the piss or like talk shit. But it's like, you were just saying characters' names from the movie. And I was like, who is he talking about right now? Like, I didn't remember. And I just saw this like 2 days ago, but I was like, wait, which one? Who's Quaritch? Like, is he Navi? Like, who is that? And that, like, that's the kind of stuff where it's like, I think the cultural like impact stuff is like overdone. Like, not every movie needs to have that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's also part of the reason, like, you go to Marvel, like no one's going to die because they're not going to do that. And then with Avatar, it's like, they might die, but that's also like, maybe because like, again, like I couldn't remember the names, like, but I think Zoe Saldana was great. Then so when I looked it up, I was like, oh, that was her. Yeah. She was fucking awesome in this movie. Like, she did a great job. And that whole scene, like, where Quaritch thinks it was Sully that killed him, and then we see that like where he actually realizes what happened. It's like, oh shit. Okay, cool. Like that's kind of rad. So, I don't know that I have like a lot of shit to talk about this as much as Ethan may have been hoping for it, but I just was like, it was fine. You know what I mean? Like cool. I don't know. Like, I don't know when I'm going to watch it again. But it's just, for me, it's just like, man, I've seen a lot of like cool movies that someone made in a year, like this is just kind of like whatever. For me personally, I'm so glad that so many people have enjoyed it and loved it. I'll go see all these other ones, because like he knows how to tell a story. And I think that's, if anything, it's just like super ambitious. This is like making Boyhood, you know what I mean? Where it's like, I didn't even really like Boyhood, but it was just like, I was impressed by what he did, like he made this movie for 20 years. Like that's crazy. Like that's like, he did it. Like this isn't great by any means, but like, that's an achievement. So I give that like to this movie as well. It's just like, it's still not really for me, but I can't sit here and like talk shit on it and be like, oh, it's so dumb, whatever. It's like, I liked it better than the first one. And that's like the highest praise I think I can give it,
Yeah.
That's some good praise, Ben. I was expecting a lot worse, if I'm going to be honest with you. So you did pretty good. That was not bad. I think
I was disappointed that I didn't hate it more. That's why I just kept my mouth shut. I was like, no, I'm gonna make him sweat it out for 48 more hours. I don't know.
Yeah. No, you definitely did. You definitely did. I think I fall kind of right in the middle of you guys, honestly. I had a good time with it. Wait, Ben, can I ask you? So Preston said he gave it 5 stars. What's your star rating that you're going to give it on Letterboxd? I know it won't show up on Letterboxd for like another 65 days, but what are you going to give it?
3.
3? Okay, solid.
It's a C. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that 3 stars? That's a C.
That's fair.
I guess.
Yeah. So I really am right in the middle of you guys. I gave it 4 stars. So initially I gave it 4.5 stars, and I think that extra half a star was because I went to opening night. I saw it at a really nice theater. I was, packed in like sardines. Everybody was there. Everybody experienced that all together. And it had been 12 years since I had seen a 3D movie, since I had gone back to Pandora and seen the Na'vi and all of these things where it's like, that's kind of fucking cool. Like, James Cameron did it again. Like, that's really impressive, And then I saw it the second time, and I don't know if it's just because it's a rewatch or what it might have been, but I was like, you know what? It didn't hit quite the same for me, but it's still pretty good. I think my biggest praises come from obviously the VFX. I had a hard time the first time that I saw it with that kind of frame rate change, that video game-esque kind of style that James Cameron put into this one. And I'm really curious what he's going to do with 3. I'm curious if like he's going to go full send on that kind of a frame rate, and if he's really trying to pull off something new when it comes to that. That was really tough for me the first time, but the second time I was like, this looks flawless. Like, it looks absolutely unreal. I do think the final 15 minutes really, really tie the movie together, which I was really impressed with. I thought it was going to be way more of a send to like a cliffhanger of Avatar 3, or like, oh, we have a new villain, or like, here's your, you get like a kind of like a post-credit-esque like look at the fire tribe or whatever it may be. And we didn't. We just kept the story compact, which I thought was nice. As compact as you can be for like a new tribe and 5 or 6 kids or whatever it may be. But I think the movie overall, to me, the story, I was just like a little bummed that we like did the same thing. I was like, oh man, didn't they invade the first time? Like, wasn't that the point of the first one? And then like, I remember getting out of the first screening, and I was like, because it's so long, right? It's more than 3 hours. So like, by the time you finish, you're like, okay, what was the first 20 minutes? Like, how did we set this up? And I remember trying to be like, okay, why did we do this again? Like, why was Quaritch back? And I do think it was an innovative way to bring it back. And I do think that scene with Quaritch, like, talking to himself over video is fucking hysterical. That's just like Big Jim just like throwing his dick on the table, like, Boogie Nights style, and just being like, I can do whatever I want. And like, that's pretty sick. But like, I noticed it's like one line where the new general, the new corporal or whatever is like, yeah, we're here because Earth is dying. And it's like, whoa, Earth is dying? Like, that should have been it. Like, that we should have really, really went full in on that. I would have really liked that a lot more. But, I think there's definitely pros and cons. And I think the biggest issue for me is the screenwriting. I wanted to mention, I kind of alluded to it earlier, James Cameron has a gift, and I don't know if that gift is necessarily with words all the time. And I want to call it one specific scene. I'm curious what you two think of this. There's a scene like in the first like 4 or 5 minutes, right, where we get the introduction back into Jake Sully, back into Pandora, and it's gorgeous. It's amazing. You're like, cool, we're back. We're doing this thing. It's awesome. And then we learn that he has kids, and he's giving us this voiceover, and he's basically like speaking Na'vi, and we hear Na'vi for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then he's like, we spoke it so much it started to sound like English. And then the rest of the movie is English. And I was like, you sly dog. You just wrote it out. You were just like, nope, we're done. Like, we're moving on. I wonder where you fall, Ben and Preston. Preston, I'll ask you first. Like, do you find that as like an impressive like feat of ingenuity to be like, that was smart. I like that. Or are you more, I'm kind of in the middle, but I guess are you like more on my side where you're like, I don't know if that applies. Like, I don't know if you can really do that.
I don't know if it's, I think it was a way, because, you're getting into put yourself in his shoes, right? You got to write the sequel,
Yeah.
and it has to be in English, like obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you gotta when you're going about that, you have to go through these kind of plot holes that arise where it is
Yeah.
like, okay, now he's a part of the Na'vi, so there's not going to be as much English speaking. Logically, like if you were to make it 100% realistic, like if
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like 100%, like
it's a lot of papyrus on the screen, man. There's a lot of papyrus on the screen. We can't have that.
They're saying you like they would be speaking in Navi the entire time, but you can't release a movie like that
Yeah.
in the real world because people show up and watch that. Nor do you want to write a bunch of Navi dialogue
Yeah.
for your
Sure.
actors to say for 3 hours. So I think it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, well, we got to figure out a way out of it here. I guess this works. And to
Yeah.
me, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm not going to get too hung up on it, right? Because it's a logistical thing. It's a logic thing of like, you can't release a movie where they're speaking Navi for 3 hours straight. Would it be kind
Yeah.
of cool? Sure, yeah, I'd be down.
Be kind of
But
sick,
like
honestly.
most of everybody is not going to be down. So
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
have to find a way around that. And if like that's the way around it, it is what it is. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
hurt me one way or the other. I don't get hung up on it. But yeah, I mean that's kind of where I land with that. I do
Yeah.
want to talk. I want to you brought up something interesting a second ago of like how it didn't necessarily tease like the Fire Tribe or something else or a new villain or something like
Yeah.
that. I think that's interesting because that just shows to me like it feels like we've been conditioned over the last 10 years
Oh yeah, million
with these
percent.
big blockbusters to have a little tease for the next thing and so that we can come back. But that's another thing that I like about the movie is that it feels very self-contained while still dropping little Easter eggs for the next few movies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It world builds in a
Yeah.
way that the first one didn't, because the first one, they weren't necessarily planning on making a bunch of sequels. This one, they're planning on making more of these. And so they're dropping little hints, things that don't necessarily 100% matter as much to this story specifically of Sully and his kids fleeing and trying to hide, you know, like the world is dying thing, Earth is dying.
Yeah.
That is kind of just a little, I don't want to say throwaway line, but it's a little thing that they drop in there.
Yep.
And then they don't really revisit it. But it feels like something that they drop in there because they're gonna revisit it later on, but they know that
Yeah.
they don't necessarily need to in this story that they're telling that is so almost small scale in a way where it's so, you know, confined to Sully, his family, and their direct dilemma with
Yeah.
or their direct conflict with Quaritch. And the same thing goes for when they're the Amrita stuff, the golden liquid that's inside the Tulkun that they're
Mhm.
like getting out of him after they kill them. Like that's like one of those things where like, hey, this is cool. This is why we're here. All right, see you in 3 years. We'll talk about it then. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like we're gonna throw it in there, and it could matter later if we need it to matter later. But we
Right.
know it doesn't necessarily matter to this story, so we're not gonna waste too much time on it. But now it's been established here. You know, I don't know. That's one of
I
the
think
things that I appreciated about it.
Yeah, didn't James Cameron basically like the week after the movie came out, he came out and was like, next one's gonna have a fire tribe, and we're gonna go to Earth at some point in time. Like the Na'vi are coming to Earth. Wasn't that like part of it? And so I think if I'm remembering that correctly, then that line of like Earth is dying, I think is very, very interesting for like where the franchise is headed. Ben, where do you fall on the screenwriting of this movie? Because in terms of, you know, best screenplays, and especially for best pictures, we had some fucking rock star screenplays this year. So it might be a little unfair to like kind of pit them against, but I'm curious where you fall on like, can James Cameron write?
I mean, I don't know. That's overall, I don't know that he can, but I will say, that when that line happened in the movie, you know, it was like I was speaking English, like the person that got the film degree and took screenwriting in my head was just, I literally out loud said, fuck yeah. Like that was like so smart. Like that's brilliant. You know what I mean? Like it's such a cop out, you know, just like, I just want to write all this Navi. I'm just like, that's super smart. Like that's great, you know, and that's fine. And like, I mean, picking it apart later on, like I lived in Brazil for a while, so I learned Portuguese, and like there was a time in my life where I'm speaking Portuguese, but I'm like, as I'm having a conversation, I'm translating it in English. But
Yeah.
there's a time when I got so fluent that I didn't have to do that anymore. Like I was like, sounds weird to say even before I say it, but like I would literally like dream in Portuguese, and you just get to that point. But I was no longer like, what's the English word for that? You know? So
Yeah.
when I thought about it in that context, I was like, I don't know. I don't think he wouldn't be thinking of this in English. You don't get so like used to something that is just in English now.
Right.
But as a device, I loved it. I thought it was so fucking smart and just like, fuck you guys, who cares? Like, that's the vibe I get from Jim Cameron. And same with the Earth thing. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we're going to go back. But I feel like for him, he was just like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just trying to tell you why we're here. Like, Earth is dying, whatever. That's why these people are here, moving on. Like, don't focus on that, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's very much just like, I'm just telling you guys why we're here. We're not going into detail about it. I'm like, all right, cool. I love it. I'm here. And they can they speak fluently basically in English now. So cool. Let's go.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah.
Yeah, I think if any director has the ability to do that, it's James Cameron, right? I mean, you go back to the first Avatar, and it was all about unobtainium, and like that's the joke, right? Like, oh, unobtainium, like what the fuck happened to unobtainium? Like, I thought that was the reason we were on Pandora, and like now we're not. And so like part of me wants to be like, well, come on, like what are we doing? And then the other part just wants to like succumb to like the majesty of Avatar and just be like,
yeah,
this is sick. Like I don't fucking care what happens. Like this is cool, whatever it is. And I think that feeling to lend yourself over to that is far more powerful than that of like, ooh, that line of dialogue was a little stiff. Like, okay, what are we doing with our time here?
Well, I feel like Jim saw that SNL skit about the papyrus font.
Oh,
he was like, I
100%.
can't have that in the movie. Like, we gotta like scrap this. That was genius. And I'm sorry, I know we want to move on, but I have two more things I want to talk about. Have either of you seen How To with John Wilson, the HBO Max show?
No.
It is hilarious. One of my favorite lines ever in TV history is on the first episode of the first season. I highly recommend it. But in season 2, there's a part where he's like just this guy, kind of like a video journalist, basically. But he goes and hangs out with this group in New York that are just diehard Avatar fans. And like they go and hang out together and like speak in the Na'vi language and shit like that. But it's funny because like, there was a time where it's like played for laughs. Like, oh my God, you guys still like Avatar? Like that came out a decade ago, but I just want to say I'm very happy for those guys that like this is happening. Like this is so
they
cool.
Did it.
Like they got their justice. Like, see, we told you guys $2 billion. So I just want to shout that out. I actually have a question though for Preston, as someone who used to work at Disney, because this is kind of the review I gave to my partner when we left was were you working there when they had the Avatar ride there? I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's a great ride. It's cool. Ethan, I don't know if you've been on it or not, or if anyone's listening who has.
I really want to.
You essentially like tap into the Na'vi and you're kind of straddling. Essentially, it's like a motorcycle kind of chassis, but like it's supposed to be the Banshee, and it's cool because it breathes on the side, so you feel it's rad. I will say though, like for me, that somehow like took away from some of the visuals of like seeing these new places for the first time, because that ride is fucking rad. Like you see so much cool stuff. You're riding through on the Banshees. And I feel like we saw some like maybe the previs for this movie in that ride. Cause like there are certain things where I'm like, I think I've seen this exact thing before, like while I was on that ride, and it's super cool, but it's just like, oh, it kind of feels like not as exciting, And again, like maybe this is like an IMAX 3D thing. If I'd seen it that way, great. But that's like kind of how the ride was. And like that ride was awesome. Did you have that at all, Preston, or is this just a me thing where it's like, I feel like I've seen this before, or did it not matter to you? You were like, cool, give me more of it. Like, I'll take it.
I worked at Disney World 2 separate times. I've been a huge like theme park fan my entire life. So that's very much like a niche interest of mine, I guess. So I've ridden that ride a lot, over 10 times probably over the course of living there, like a lot of times. Love it every single time. I think when they're making that ride, the like Disney Imagineers, as they're called, I think what they kind of wanted to do was kind of take you through each and every individual biome that you can in Pandora. I think that was kind of the goal. So in that, you did see some of the water tribes. You saw some of the water Na'vi people in that ride, kind of before Way of Water was. I mean, probably it was still in pre-production, like way like pre-production, I mean, they released that a long time ago. So I think, when they were making that, because it's a very separate creative endeavor.
Oh
right?
yeah.
You've got these guys who are making a theme park ride, and they're just like, okay, well, obviously whatever we do is probably going to be, we got to get a thumbs up from Jim, but at the end of the day, like, we just want to take you through every biome that we can to immerse you, and we have to include some water too, because if we can splash some water on your face, make it extra 4D, that makes it even cooler. So we'll do that, and then you've got the filmmakers over here making Way of Water completely separate.
Yeah.
That said, I do understand where you're coming from. I didn't feel that way, but I do understand how you would feel that way watching Way of Water and saying like, I've seen this stuff before, because at the time that they made Flight of Passage, the water Na'vi, like, we hadn't ever really explored that. They were they were confined to the forest the entire first Avatar. That's just what we knew them as. This expands the world so much, but they already did a tiny little mini expansion in this ride a little bit almost. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing I haven't thought about till you said that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Part of me like wanted to give Jim credit that he was like, I'm going to sneak the next 4 movies into this ride. People aren't going to know it. And then all of a sudden it's going to come out. He's like, oh, he put it in front of us this whole time. That's great. But cool.
That's Sly Guy. That's Sly Guy and Big Jim.
I love it.
All I want to say is, if the Academy does not do a Banshees of Inisherin skit where there are Pandora Banshees in Inisherin, Ireland, then I don't know what the fuck we're even doing. Like, I don't even know why we have the Oscars, honestly. So let's make it happen, Academy. Come on. True cinema moment. Let's talk about our favorite scenes of the movie. On the regular A24 edition of our podcast, we kind of use this as our structure to go through the film. We've obviously already talked about it. So we're each going to choose one true cinema moment. It could be something that you loved visually, emotionally, that you just thought was funny, or just like simply the best part of the movie. I'll call out just a few for listeners and for ourselves to kind of have a little remembering, a little, a spark of remembrance for the film here. Introduction to Jake Sully and his family. We learn all about his kids. We get the good English bit. Obviously very imperative to the movie. Meeting the Natiri, the kind of the water tribe, I think is a big part of this film. Swimming and the training montage in the ocean. This thing feels like it lasts for 3 hours. So it's beautiful, but it's really long. So I'm curious if anybody's gonna think about that. Hunting the Tolkien. Is it Tolkien, right? Is how you say that?
It's Tolkien.
Tolkien. Okay,
right.
Awesome.
Tolkien.
Nice. I had it right the first time. Let's go. Hunting the Tolkien, Quaritch and company burning the villages. Absolutely brutal that he's just like, fuck it, unleash it on the villages. Like, let's just burn it all down. And then we get the massive battle in the third act. It feels, it's literally like 45 minutes to an hour, this final act that we're building up to, that is just unreal in terms of the action and the stakes and everything that it encompasses. Preston, I'll let you go first since you're the guest. What is your true cinema moment for Avatar: The Way of Water? I'm really curious, since you're an Avatar diehard. I'm going to make you pick one part.
That is just so rude of you.
I try to be as mean as possible in the pod.
That's what I was thinking as you're listing this stuff. I was like, man, where do I even begin? Because there's truly, I could pick half the scenes in this movie and they're all equivalent to one another in terms of how much I love them, and like really, really felt like this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, or one of the coolest things I've ever seen, on screen. But obviously, like, the ending fight is very good. I think for me, there's so many, and if we could spend an hour just doing this, I would fill up the entire hour.
There's our Patreon pod right there. Avatar: The Way of Water on Patreon.
Yeah, let's do that.
Picks,
I don't know if this isn't necessarily my favorite over all of the others, but it is one that I was maybe the most surprised by. It was one that I wouldn't have expected in terms of like what it did. The scene where they're going underwater, basically. I'm going to try and explain this in layman's terms for anyone who doesn't know the characters' names. They're going underwater to the spirit tree, the big glowy underwater thing.
Yeah.
And
the giant sea anemone, right? That's pretty much like what it was.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. But it's like connected to Awa, like the god, right?
Yes.
And so they attach their hair and all that. And then Kiri, Jake's daughter, who is adopted,
who is still played by Sigourney Weaver, by the way.
Yes, 14-year-old Sigourney Weaver, who actually did a pretty good job, better than I thought she would. But anyways, she has that vision, right, with her mom, Grace, who was in the first film, died at the end of the first
Yeah.
film. She has a vision where she sees her, and she has this whole like, why am I different than everybody else? Why can I like control the animals? Why do I have this like? Why am I in touch with nature in the way that all of these, all my friends aren't? Like, what's going on? Why am I different? Who's my dad? And then Grace just kind of like starts screaming, it's like, oh, and disappears. And then
Yeah.
Carrie goes into the seizure and whatever. But that scene was so interesting to me because I was watching it and I was just like, oh my God, it's The Last Jedi. And I'm a big Star Wars person.
Let's
so
go.
I see that and I'm just like, that is so Rey in The Last
Yeah,
Jedi.
baby.
I just love that so much.
That mirror
Because I
scene,
felt
right?
like
Oh, it's so good.
yeah, the exact same thing. Like watching that, I was like, I feel like James Cameron saw The Last Jedi in 2018 and like called up Bob Iger and was just like, hey man, delay it another 3 years because I'm writing a new character. And it's like, I just saw what they did with Rey in The Last Jedi and that was fucking sick. So we're gonna do that too. But yeah, I mean that was one that sticks out to me amongst the rest because it was one of those moments where I was like, that feels so directly inspired by The Last Jedi. I don't know if it was, but I'm a big Last Jedi fan. And to me, seeing that was really cool. And it made me so excited. It's one of those things where he's just like, we're going to drop this little thing in and in Avatar 4, it's going to be cool as heck that we did it 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, that's a little hint toward the future. It doesn't necessarily, like you could cut that scene from the movie and it would still tell a perfectly fine story. But I'm glad it's in there because not only is it cool and inspired by a movie that I didn't expect to see inspiration from in this movie, but it's also world building. It's building for those sequels that are coming, and that it just made me more excited about Avatar as a franchise for the first time. Obviously, we've only had this one for 13 years, so like to be excited about this as like a franchise, as something with a future, like that's cool for me because I've been a fan of a singular movie and now I'm excited for everything that's to come. And that scene sticks out amongst all of the rest for me in those terms. But again, I could probably pick 20 other ones that I love just as much. So
I'm gonna let you shoot your shot right now, Preston. Who's her father? Call it now. So in 3 years when it happens, you get like $1 million payout. If you had to guess. Because I have no fucking clue. I don't even know. I have no idea.
No, I don't know either. That's the thing. It's very, you think about it for more than like 5 seconds, and you're like, there's really nothing that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
I don't know how it would have happened, but I would not be surprised if they did kind of an immaculate conception type thing. Also very I feel like this movie in a lot of ways was inspired by all 3 eras of Star Wars, which I appreciate. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do like an Anakin thing where she's kind of the chosen one. She can connect to Awa and control the biosphere around her, whether it's the plants or the fish or the animals. Like clearly she has some sort of force-like control over them, which I think is really cool and not what I expected to see in these movies at all. Something that supernatural. So I don't know. I think that they might do like an immaculate conception type thing. I don't know how he's gonna write that in, but it'll be some one way or another.
Yeah, I love the idea of Big Jim just watching The Last Jedi in his house, just being like that. That's it. That's how that's how I'm gonna write Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yeah.
That's the money right there.
I literally saw that scene, that seizure scene, that vision, and the first thing I thought was like, that's The Last Jedi. He totally like I love the image of him watching it and just calling up Disney and being like, hey, delay it. I know I've delayed it before.
What a boss.
Delay it again.
What a boss.
It's like, this is cool and I want to do it. So,
yeah.
I know that's not how it went down, but it would make me happy if it did.
That's you've created this now. That's forever how it went down in my head. So that's I'm forever attached to this theory. Ben, true cinema moment? What do you got? I'm gonna make you pick one. So what do you got?
I mean, it kind of ties into what Preston's talking about here. I enjoyed like the swimming and training montage. I know I normally go off script here, but that was like the thing I liked the most. That was the most interesting dynamic, I think, was the kids interacting with each other and teaching them how, and obviously just like their kids are dumb. It's just like, why can't they keep up with us swimming and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting. Also gave us plenty of hints of like foreshadowing, which was like the big payoff of just like whatever those jellyfish things were like, oh yeah, if you use these, you can breathe underwater. It's like, okay, cool. So
that was cool.
We will see these again later. That's awesome. And then just, so they're doing all this stuff, and then they all come up for air, and then just being like, where's Kiri? Like, and then we cut to her, and it's like, oh, she's like good, like she can just like chill down here. It's like, oh, that's super interesting that, like, again, like none of this is like new, like someone finding themselves in a new place, but it was a cool way, I guess, to tell that and just be like, oh, like, you maybe you didn't fit in like in the forest part, of Pandora or whatever. Maybe this is more your element, or who knows what else we're going to see, to Preston's point. So that stuck with me the most, just because it was a great like tie-in at the end of the movie when she rescues her mom and sister, whose names I know, but I'm just not saying right now. But it's just cool to see that, of just like, hey, little like fish lights, come with me, like go out and help people and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was awesome. Also, quick side note, while I looked up her character's name, Kate Winslet was in this. What the fuck? Like,
hell yeah, she was, dude.
Is she the other, like, is she the angry mom or whatever of the water people? Is that her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, cool.
That's a great description. Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed that. Hit that right on the head.
That's what her character, when they were casting, like the casting call, angry
looking
mom
for
of
angry mom of water people type. So, like, well, let me tell you about Kate Winslet. All right,
yeah,
cool.
Kate Winslet was like, I need some work. I got to get in. I got to get in this franchise. That's pretty funny. I think for me, my true cinema moment, and I feel like I knew this going into my second viewing, and I was like, hey, am I still gonna pick this? I think there's a lot of good things to shout out. I love the montage. I think it's beautiful and gorgeous, and just a wonderfully patient way to introduce a brand new world, a brand new part of this world. And I think it absolutely deserves that. And Big Jim gives it the time that it needs, which I think is really smart and really well done. I think there's a lot of cool things, but I'm gonna go really niche here, and I'm actually, gonna pick the very. It's like I'm gonna stitch together a couple like moments, but it's every moment that we're on the boat hunting the Tulkun, and we see like the poachers, and how Quaritch interacts with them, and how he commandeers that boat, like he does with everything else, and more specifically the part where they finally kill the one that they are hunting, and they go inside and they realize like they literally just suck out this sauce out of the brain, and then they ditch the rest of the body, and that vial is worth like $80 million, and that is what is paying for all of this research and for Sky people to be on Pandora and all of these things. And I really, really, really like that we get Jermaine Clement as Dr. Garvin. His English accent is hysterical to me. It's just every time he talks, I'm like, this motherfucker is funny.
Why are they doing that
it's
to him,
so
though?
bad. I don't
the other guy
know.
got to keep like his Australian accent. Like, let him be from New Zealand. It's fine. Like, no one cares.
I know. I was like, every time he talks, I'm like, why? What are we doing? Like, why did James Cameron be like, no, you cannot speak in your accent? But I thought it was funny, and then it just connected with me the most. More of this like, Pandora is just being rifled through by other people that just want money, and like it is absolutely devastating to all of these tribes. And later in the story, we find out like this was the Tulkun that like connected with Kate Winslet's character, of like they shared stories, and they told each other about their lives, and they shared shared the music they were writing, and all of these crazy things that are exceptionally complex and deep, and how that is such an important part of that ecosystem. And these poachers just like jack it up, take it, and Dr. Garvin, Jermaine Clement, like every time he gets the vial, I'm just rethinking about it. The guy like pretends to throw the vial at him, and he's like, don't do that. Or he just like very solemnly is like, don't joke around like this. And you can tell like he does not fuck around with this stuff. Like he's only doing it so he can literally research things. This guy just like rides his dick and has fun out here like hunting these whales, and I think it's an excellent scene. I love it, and that is not the scene that Big Jim intended to be my true cinema moment, but you know what? It's what I chose, and that's the reality that I live in.
I do love how that guy gets killed. Like the
yes, okay.
scientist.
I wanted to mention that too. Yes,
yeah.
Fucking awesome. Like
Dude,
that one's amazing.
That was like T2 shit where James Cameron was like, let's get weird. Yeah, easily. And like the Tolkien like jumps over the ship, and you're like, nature is metal, bro. Like nature always wins, and it was so tight. And oh god, yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
I will say though too,
like
that. The price tag on that vial should have been $1 billion, not $1 million. Like there's billions of dollars of equipment there on that island, and to kill an entire whale basically for, like a Monster Energy drink worth of whatever this is. It's like, this is $80 million. I'm like, you guys are on a ship that's like $10 billion. Like this doesn't, like, there's no way there's enough of these Tolkien here for you guys to get your money back. Like Jim just should have made it 80 billion. Then that makes sense. That's like, then your ROI makes sense. But it's like, I don't know, if we can kill a whale, we get 80 million. It's like, who cares, man? Like the ships that you guys are spending, it's like there are billions of dollars on this planet. Like knowing how much we spend on our fucking army shit here, like there's just no way that stuff could have made any money on $80 million little vials. Like that's insane. But that took me out of it for a second. I was like, that should have been 80 billion. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Say it's worth like 100 trillion. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, this stuff.
Yeah.
Like if it lets people live forever, then you should, like, this is, whatever. But 80 million, like, it's such a weird price. Like this movie costs like 4 of that, it's like, that's crazy. Like 80 million. Like, no, dude, like, $1,000 trillion. Like, cool. Yeah. This has to be worthwhile. But I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I could probably get together 80 million. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. It was just that took me out of it for a second. Like, this is such a weird number to say. Like, you guys should have just like jacked this up to some astronomical. If you're going to search for unobtainium, don't be like, it's worth like 80 million. It's like, no, you can't get this because it's worth $1 trillion for like an ounce. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my God.
I don't know. That bothered me, and I just needed to get that out. But
I would never have called that vial being the trigger button for you in this episode where you're just like, fuck this, man. This had to make sense, and it didn't do it, and I just would have never guessed it. So you stumped me again, Ben.
None of this movie is real. None of it matters. But for some reason, that really just got under my skin. I was like, 80 million. Like, no one proofread this. It's like, is that supposed to be a B, Jim? Like, did you say, like, is it supposed to be million or supposed to be billion? Like, that for some reason, I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, it could have been anything. Why did you choose this movie?
I've seen this movie 4 times, and I didn't think of that until yesterday when I saw it yesterday. Yeah. When I didn't even, it didn't cross my mind. I went right over my head. But yesterday it said 80 million, and I was like, that's not.
That seems a lot.
That's not a lot.
Feels like it could
this
be
movie
more.
cost 350 million. Like, and that vial's 80. Like, we would never send Jim to another universe to like maybe come back with $80 million. It's like, no, we're not going to spend like 10 trillion to get you to go make 80 million. Like, it just, I don't know. It didn't make sense. Their like setups are fucking legit. It's like those things cost so much money. And maybe the Tolkien, maybe they're just like limitless and we didn't see them all or something. But it's like, you got to kill a lot of fucking whales to make your money back on this. Like, that's insane that this is what you guys are doing. But that's it. I'm done.
Big Jim's going to put you in therapy, bro. This is wild. All right. Now that Ben has it off of his chest and I can catch my breath and hopefully stop coughing up a lung over here, because that was iconic. That was hilarious. All right, let's do our favorite blank Oscar winners through the year. Every single week, we tackle a new category from the Academy Awards from years past. We did Best Original Screenplay last week with Jamie Gyrak for Banshees of Inisherin, because that is up for Original Screenplay. We have talked about it a couple of times here. Avatar: The Way of Water is up for Best VFX, and seemingly a lock. I don't think anything else is going to win, and I would say if you are in a year in which there is an Avatar, you just better toss in the towel. Like, it's just not going to work for you this year. So we're going to talk about Best VFX throughout the history of the Academy Awards. Now, I did want to mention this category initially started as the Engineering Effects Award in the 1920s. It then evolved into the Special Effects Award in the 1930s, and finally reached its final form as the Visual Effects Award in 1963. So we've only had this award for 60 years, which is kind of crazy, considering the Academy Awards are almost 100 years old. So, Preston, best VFX throughout the year. I'm sure Avatar is probably going to be on your list, but do you have any other things where you're like, that movie was dope, or like that movie, maybe robbed another movie that should have won?
Yeah, obviously Avatar is what comes to mind first. And I think that, like I said earlier, and like you just said now, I think if there is a lock at the Oscars this year, it is best VFX. I feel like, and that's not a slight against the other nominees. You mentioned Top Gun Maverick. Incredible
not gonna
VFX
win
on that as well as the rest of them. I can't remember who all the nominees were, but they were good nominees. But I think it's by far gonna be Way of Water. If I had to pick my favorite best VFX as I scroll down the Wikipedia page right now.
On the spot, I love it.
Enough.
I respect that. Off the
I can buy you some time if you want to look. I'll go through mine.
No, I got it. I got it. I'm ready.
He's confident.
I was looking during Ethan's intro. I'm good. So no, if I had to pick, I would go with in 2006 Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest.
Nice. Yeah.
That movie, in terms of VFX, and I love that trilogy. I think At World's End is a masterpiece. That's a conversation for another time. But that movie, Dead Man's Chest, in terms of VFX, it did almost what Avatar did 3 years later.
Yeah.
And gets none of the credit for getting as close as it did.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the VFX on Davy Jones are insane.
Yeah.
And we don't think about it because now it's easy to look back and be like, oh yeah, that's just the VFX. Like Thanos looked like that pretty easily in Infinity War and Endgame, and we've just had these totally CGI characters and villains, and we've gotten used to it in terms of blockbuster cinema. So like, it's not that big of a deal to see, a big CGI villain when the CGI is pretty dang good. We don't really think that much of it. But back in 2006, to do what they did, there's a lot of movies back then that you're like, this happened in 2002, this happened in 2003.
Yeah.
But Dead Man's Chest, to me, I see that and I'm like, oh, that would be good VFX if it came out today.
Yeah.
Like, that is still great. And it obviously Avatar came along 3 years later and took what Dead Man's Chest did and did it, I think, bigger and better.
Yeah.
But they did that in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy to me because it doesn't get the kind of credit that I think it deserves. Especially when you look at it now and when you look at it over the last 10 years, it maybe doesn't stick out as much as it would have because we're used to great CGI. It's just something that we, have grown accustomed to in this day and age, but it wasn't like that in 2006. It was probably, I would say, the first like fully CGI character that looked that good.
Yeah.
Is Davy Jones in that movie. It doesn't get the credit for it.
Do you want to know who played Davy Jones? Academy Award nominee Bill Nighy. Yeah,
that's right.
Bet your ass. First Academy Award nomination this year. That's astounding. That's a franchise I really want to rewatch. Like, I remember loving those, and I even went to go see, I don't know if I've seen all of them, but I went to go see Dead Men Tell No Tales, which Javier Bardem is in that film, I believe.
Yeah.
That movie, not great, like critically received. I remember I went to go see that. That was my first time seeing a Pirates movie in like 5 years, 6 years or whatever. I was like, this franchise like kind of fucking rocks. Like Pirates are sick, dude. Like that is so cool. So you might kick off my franchise rewatch on Pirates. I appreciate that.
Man, if you do, I want to hear your thoughts because 4 and 5 are not that great, but they're still fun and I'll watch them. But At World's End, that third one.
See, I don't think I've seen that.
I think it's a masterpiece. I love it.
I think I stopped after the second one. I liked them a lot. And I was even say like that first one, Jeffrey Rush with Barbosa, like his VFX is good too. Like when he goes like, out of the light and stuff, like they did a good job from the beginning. But I agree, like Bill Nighy is as Davy Jones was fantastic. So I think it's a really, really good spot.
That's a good one. Selection. Ben, what do you got on your list? Best VFX throughout the years.
I got way too many, but I'm gonna talk about all of them briefly. The first one is the first one that ever won this award for a movie called Wings. And there's a shot that people have seen probably a lot on like Twitter or whatever, but just like one of the first real amazing kind of moving shots where we're going down this row of tables. And this is in 1927. So like the movie camera has literally been invented for like 30 years. Like this hasn't been going on for a long time. And just how fast like they were able to adapt and learn how to use it. So I think that would just deserve a shout out. Look for the wings shot on YouTube. You can look that up and you'll see it. And just keep in mind, there's almost 100 years ago they did it, and it's very impressive.
So crazy.
These other ones I think are just notable. Mary Poppins in '64, which also kind of ties into one later on that I'm going to talk about with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That's just like, for me, probably like my personal favorite pick. Like this came out at the perfect time for me. And then thinking about now, like Disney and Warner's like licensing each other's stuff like that, just they're not going to do that. You know, it's like, it's so cool they did that back then. Live action with the animation, just like Mary Poppins. Star Wars obviously deserves a shout out for what it did in '77 and what it continues to do. And then some big ones, Jurassic Park, Spielberg. I'm listening to the Screen Drafts right now. They're doing the whole month of Spielberg and the Jurassic Park. Like it still holds up. It's still great. The Matrix, again, speaking of like changing the industry, like all these movies have kind of done this. How many movies tried to do the bullet shot, you know, after the Matrix came out? Like just everyone is doing it. And then one that just talked about yesterday, actually, on the other pod, we did a movie draft. But the movie Gravity, like if you saw that in the theaters, I feel like it hit you, because it was just like, it's amazing what Cuarón is able to pull off with all being on like the green screen, like just really creating this sense of like just massive, you know, space and all that kind of stuff. So I want to shout that one out because that one really kind of affected me. So it's a long list, but I think they all deserve at least a little bit of a mention.
Yeah, you know, I think Best VFX is really interesting because going through this list, I think there were some serious ones that I just like kind of didn't really know that like had won awards at all. I only have a few on my list. 2001: A Space Odyssey, I think is definitely worth noting and worth calling out. Stanley Kubrick in 1968. Spider-Man 2 in 2004. The movie rips. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is iconic, obviously. I mean, No Way Home. He was in No Way Home as well. That VFX is unreal. Like, Sam Raimi was able to do things that, like, we had just never seen, A, in a comic book movie, and B, like, kind of anywhere else. I mean, that eye shot pops up on my Twitter feed, like, every other week, where, like, we go into the glasses, and, like, it's just so chilling. Blade Runner 2049. Obviously, that's my boy Denis and Ryan Gosling and Ana de Armas, and everything is perfect about that film. So that one, the one thing that I have written down here in all caps, excuse me, all caps, which I was flabbergasted. 2018, you've got Avengers: Infinity War and Ready Player One, which Ben and I, we both love Ready Player One. Like I love that movie. I think it's so fun and fantastic. Whole thing is fucking VFX. Like, it doesn't exist without this new wave of tech that Spielberg was trying out. And then you get Damien Chazelle's First Man to take the Best VFX award, which that movie is incredible, but like, that's fucking crazy to me. That's just crazy. When you're like, when I saw Avengers: Infinity War, I was like, what do you mean it didn't win? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, my brain doesn't comprehend. And that's my boy Chazelle. That's my boy Ryan Gosling. Like, those are guys I support, and I still am just like a little shooketh that happened in 2018. And I don't know. I still don't know. But you know, I think it was worth mentioning. That happened. We've come to the end of the pod. Does anybody have any closing Avatar thoughts? Ben, you got any other irks you got to get off your chest?
If you want me to keep going on that vial, I got another hour in me, so we can do it. But
it doesn't make any sense. Preston, you got any closing thoughts? Avatar is getting ready to go into its 8th weekend, and it's notable because Knock at the Cabin, I believe, does come out this weekend. Will that be the movie to finally dethrone Avatar: The Way of Water? That has been the number one at the box office for 7 weeks in a row. I'm interested about that. Do you have anything else that you want to say about Avatar before we wrap here?
Man, what don't I want to say about Avatar?
Just monologue for the next 45 minutes. Go for it.
Yeah. No, as far as Knock at the Cabin, I don't think it will unseat that number one spot. I think because and the reason I say that is because it's the same genre as Megan was, and Megan didn't do it. And Megan, I felt
I
like
thought that could
maybe
have
it's
done it.
because I'm too online, but it was pretty popular.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And pretty good from what I've heard. I didn't see it. I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I watch some, but
I like Megan. It was
uh
a good time.
but yeah, so I don't think it'll be unseated. I think if I had to say one thing about Avatar that I haven't said, I mean, what I don't know what I would say. The performances are great across the board. I think Sam Worthington gives so much better of a performance, and I think he didn't even give a bad one in the first one.
Hmm.
I think it was intentionally muted in the first one because he was kind of this jarhead, and now he's not. So I think he does a phenomenal job, and I think the 3D was great, and I've not been a 3D guy for ever. I've never been a 3D
Mhm.
guy, but the way he does it, whether it's just like he doesn't resort to cheap tricks all the time, maybe it's just a speck floating through the water that's just subtly
Yeah.
in front of you, or something floating through the air, or just like a leaf that's closer to you than one of than the subject is in the frame. Like things like that are
Yeah.
like just the little things, the clever ways to use 3D that aren't going to give me a headache.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that aspect of it. And I'm just really excited for the next couple movies. Obviously, as somebody who's been a fan for as long as I have been, I'm not surprised that I'm as excited as I am. But that being said, it's cool to be excited for this franchise because all of the other franchises right now are based off of something else. The MCU is based off of comics,
Sure.
same
Mhm.
with DC.
First
Star
original
Wars is
franchise.
based off of kind of itself in a
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
course of the years. But Avatar is this thing that's purely built for movies. It's built for the big
Big
screen.
Jim's
It's
brain
built
right there.
for the
Yeah.
cinema. And we get a whole franchise based off of that. And it's all, obviously, like you've said, Ben, it's not they're not stories necessarily that we haven't seen before.
Mhm.
It's pulling from other things, but at the same time, it's just like this is an original franchise, a creative vision by one guy, and we get to see it on the biggest screen with the biggest budget. And it's just like, the movies, like that just makes me excited. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yes.
cool as somebody who likes going to the movie theater, even
Yeah.
if I didn't like the movies, I would be excited to see the next one just because it's cool that it exists and that it is as big as it is. So I'm just really excited and glad that The Way of Water was successful and good and
Yeah.
make money, because I have been terrified for 13 years
You're
that it would
vindicated.
not be.
Yeah.
So
Now you can
I
sleep
feel very
peacefully.
vindicated. I
Yep.
feel good. So.
Yeah. I look, Preston, I assume you're gonna buy this movie, right? You're gonna own this when it comes out.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my pitch.
I'm gonna own it so hard.
I'm gonna own that movie so hard. Here's my pitch. Coming from a guy that just pre-ordered the Babylon 4K Steelbook last night, Ben, I'm looking at you, brother. Let's
Mhm.
go. Can't
Yeah.
wait. Very excited.
Yep.
I had a beer and I was like, we're doing this right now, even though Babylon is available on VOD today, which I might just buy just because I can't wait for the Steelbook. Anyway, here is my pitch. Here is where I was going with this. I want to know, Big Jim's got the balls to bring it back to cinemas, to bring 3D back. We're getting Titanic restored in 4K, back in 3D. Here's where he needs to implement his footprint. Bring it back to the TV market. Bring 3D TVs back. Get the package deal coming when Avatar The Way of Water comes out on physical disc. You get Avatar The Way of Water in 3D with your 3D television. You get the bundle, the Big Jim bundle. I might buy it, honestly. Like if they pitch it as that, I'm like, that'd be a fun time. That'd be a good time, honestly. I might buy that.
He could do it. He could do it. I feel like if he put all of his energy into that endeavor,
he could
it's
do it,
not
right?
impossible.
It would probably be
Yeah.
$80 million. That's his arbitrary number for everything. He's like $80 million. That's what it has to be.
It's gotta
Ben?
at least be like the Big Jim. Like he's gotta get the box set. Like put
Yeah.
both Terminators in 3D. Like bring it all back. If like not just the most recent movie. Like throw in
I love
all
that.
of his movies.
I love that.
And
So you get
then,
all
yeah.
of the Big Jim movies restored in 4K with 3D with a 3D television. What's the
Yeah.
price tag? What's the price tag on that? You're looking at like 7 Gs, dude. That's insane.
Something like that. Yeah.
$80 million. Ben,
80 million.
what's your your final thoughts on Avatar? Anything else to share?
I can't wait for the next one. Like I'm just wow. I can't wait. It's gonna be
Brimming with excitement.
Yeah.
Just overflowing with joy.
You heard
Can't
the
wait.
sincerity, right? In my voice. Like I'm
100%.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
Can't beat it. Oscars, Oscars 2024, Avatar, Fire People. I don't know. It's going to be nom for Best Picture, and we'll be back. So it's going to be a good time. Book it in your calendars already. Preston, I want to say thanks for coming on the pod. This was great, and I appreciate you, jumping on here. Alden got you locked in within like 10 minutes of asking him, which was so cool. Alden's going to be on for a future episode, joining us for Tar, which is going to be a really good time as well. Thanks for coming on. If people want to find more of you, social media or the work that you do, where can they find you at?
They can find me at Preston C. Moore, the letter C, not like the name Seymour, on Twitter, Instagram, what have you. It's funny that, Ethan, that you said Alden got me on real quick, because Alden and I have kind of had this banter. He's not an Avatar fan. He does not like it.
Oh, fascinating.
So we've kind of had a back and forth. And when he texted me, he was like, yeah, I got a buddy who's looking for somebody who loves Avatar. And I figured that you would be the guy. And I was like, I am the guy because you're not. So get me on. This was great. I appreciate you guys. I'm glad to have been on. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. Preston Seymour.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say real quick, we have a spreadsheet of all of our future guests, and we kind of reached out to everybody, and we were like, what's your power rankings for movies that you want to cover? Like, who wants to cover what kind of a thing? Alden got back to us. Out of 6 movies that we had to go, Avatar: The Way of Water, dead last on the list. So
he hasn't seen it.
I corroborate your story. Alden is not an Avatar guy, so
he hasn't seen Way of Water. He's said multiple. We're like, dude, you gotta go see it. See it while it's in theaters.
Won't do it.
This is your chance. It's a big deal. And he was like, he's just like, man, if it's a good story, then it'll be good on Disney Plus. And I'm like, yes, but also it just looks so much cooler on a big screen. Come on.
That's
I respect it.
Whatever.
Well, yeah, I think it's safe to say that Alden doesn't think this is going to win Best Picture. But it's nominated, and I think that's noteworthy, to say the least. So, Preston, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at 24 Minutes of A24. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube. You can see all of our beautiful faces and Preston's amazing fit that I'm still jealous of. You can see all that on our YouTube, so go subscribe there. And thanks again for your support. I am Ben Lawhorn.
And I am Ethan Simi. And as the legendary and immortal Tom Cruise says, see you at the movies.